Section 13 of Neighbourhood, A Year's Life in and About an English Village, by Tickner Edwards. Read by Peter Yearsley. June, Part 2. 3. For days past now, the rain has been steadily falling hour after hour from dark to dark. Rain and wind together are always disconcerting and often melancholy in the last degree, but still soft summer rain like this, not heavy enough to obscure an outlook, yet sufficient to serve as an excuse for stopping indoors, has all sorts of commendable qualities. Much of the time, both in daylight and darkness, I have spent lolling out of a little dormer window high up in the roof of this old house, and I have got to know many small things about life and work in Windlecombe that I have never known before. It would seem that the cat and I are almost the only able-bodied creatures, feathered, four-footed, or human, that are not out and about in the rain, and I alone because the indoor mood happens to possess me. If I shed that craze before the weeping weather is done, I may be squelching about with the rest all day long in the sodden lanes, or slithering joyfully over the green turf of the downs, miles away, barefoot and bareheaded, absent-mindedly whistling the first halves of innumerable tunes as I go. But of that in its season. The cat and I are of a mind now. The comforts of a dry coat appeal to each of us for the moment irresistibly, and we lean out over the window-sill no farther than will afford me a view of the village doings, and her an eye feast on the martins chattering about the roof-eaves below. I saw Farmer Coles go by in his gig to-day, and heard him call out to his bailiff on the footway, "If 'tis fine, George, in the morning, get all the tackle down to the hoe-field, and make a start first thing." The word brought my heart into my mouth. The hoe-field is the field where the first wild rose opened to the spell of the Nightingale's music, and it meant that haying time had come round at last. Tomorrow there might be a new sound in Windlecombe, the high ringing note of the mowing machines, and I knew then there would be no hour of daylight free from it until the last meadow lay shorn and desolate under the summer sun. In modern village life, the lot of the sentimentalist is no easy one, especially if he love his neighbour, though he may secretly repine for the old days when the grass came down to the rhythmic song of the scythe, and the corn to the tune of the sickle. He cannot blink the fact that in farm life prosperity and machinery go hand in hand together. The true, indeed the only, way for him now is to realise that not all the beauty of country things belongs to old times, and not all the hard, ugly utilitarianism of nowadays has come in with machinery. Honestly considered, there is no mechanical farm implement of today essentially at variance with the spirit of beauty. A threshing mill or a reaper and binder owes its form and parts to the same designer that made the sickle. The lines of a sailing ship are unvarying lines of grace because they are dictated by wind and water, and the unchanging needs of earth that made sickle, scythe, and ploughshare what they are as unchanging and imperious as ever. It was hard to conceive the Nightingale's song without the loveliness of the mowing grass, the green dragonflies cruising over its sea of blossom, the shadows of the swallow's wings upon it, and the grumbling bees like pearl divers at fault down in its emerald depths. But now, listening to the songs of the birds in the village gardens round about, songs that seemed all the more joyous for the grey light and the unceasing patter of the rain, the truth fell cold upon me that the Nightingale's was no longer among them. But a few days past she was keening as sorrowfully as ever. In the one glimpse of soused moonshine last night, I had thought to hear her plaint far down by the river, but I could not be sure of it, and the sun had not returned. Maybe her song is done at last, and I could wish it so, now that the grass is to fall. With a little neck craning, I can contrive a view of the Reverend's garden, or as much of it as is discernible through the crowding trees. On the smooth fair lawn I can see his white doves strutting, but they are there alone to-day. Generally, when I look forth, there is the gaunt black figure pacing to and fro, with these snow-white atoms fluttering about its feet. At the end of the lawn an arm goes out, and the figure pulls up at the first touch on the rose-covered trellis. There is a bank of mignonette at the other end, and here he halts and turns, warned by the music of the bees. But I have never been able to guess what guides him unerringly between the rippled edges of the flower-beds, nor why, when walking under the wall, hung from end to end with the blue racemes of wisteria, he goes no further each way than the limit of the blossom's reach. The gleaming white turrets of syringa, of acacia, of guelder rose, these, I know, are just visible to him, and his doves lighten the darkness a little about his feet, but there are whole stretches of the garden given over to deep-hued things, rhododendrons and peonies, Canterbury bells and flaming tiger lilies. Amidst these he must pass with eyes as little aware of their passionate colour as I of the tiger moth's scarlet when he burrs in my ear at night. Yet is glowing colour of a truth a thing that reaches us through one sense alone? I have doubted it ever since. An angry shout struck up to me just now from a side alley below the green, where some of the poorest and prettiest of the cottages are jumbled together. It is strange how far sounds carry on these still rainy mornings. The shout was followed by the shrill tones of a woman and the thud of something being hurled into the street. Presently, through the alley mouth, appeared a man with a basket on his back. He came up the street through the rain, bent and lurching, his black beard wagging with imprecations he was at no pains to subdue. It was Darky, the tramp, fern-seller, ne'er-do-well, a familiar figure in Windlecombe. As usual, he was pretty far gone in liquor. He took the middle of the way, addressing himself to all passers-by indiscriminately. "Women!" he cried in his fine deep voice, with the violoncello quality in it. "Women, you may live till crack o' doom, sir, and then never learn how to take 'em. I laid to, says she, only last Saturday, ma'am. And bring another brace, Darky, she says, when you happened along again. All as nice could be, sir. And now, soon as a sot eyes on me, a hups wi' a foot, and—" He turned to the corner of the house, and I heard no more. I wonder now how Darky fares this weather in his downland Eerie. It has always been a mystery in Windlecombe as to where he passes his nights. At all times, winter or summer, he is to be met with, tramping up the lane towards the downs, using the last light of day, apparently, in putting himself as far as may be from the chance of a night's lodging. And in early mornings you meet him trudging down again from the heights, his basket full of odd hedge-side garnerings for sale in the town. The mystery is a mystery to me no longer, although it was quite by chance I lit upon him in his secret nook. Coming over the downs one winter's morning, I saw a thin blue spiral of smoke rising from the very centre of a great patch of gorse on a hillside, and threading my way through the wilderness, bent on elucidating this phenomenon, I came at length upon a queer little scene. At the mouth of a sort of cave cut deep into the solid green heart of the gorse thicket burned a little fire of sticks, and over it hung a pot that gave forth a savoury steam. Behind the fire lay Darky, on a snug couch of hay and old sacking, fast asleep with a pipe in his mouth. Evidently he had dozed off in the midst of his preparations for a meal. I took one swift look round his castle, noting various old tins, old coats, and the like, hanging over his head, several sugar boxes filled with odd lumber behind him, and a shepherd's folding bar, a deadly weapon, 20 pounds or so of solid iron, lying conveniently to his hand, and then I crept away as silently as I had come. Not that I feared any violence from him. In all the years we had been acquainted, I had never known him harm a mouse, but many was the time I had turned him away from my own door, unceremoniously enough, sometimes with hard words, once or twice, indeed, with threatenings of his natural enemy, the constable. And I feared now reprisals of a kind that would hurt almost as much as the folding bar heftily wielded. I feared to see Darky stagger to his feet and pull off to me one of my own long discarded caps, hear him give me generous and courtly words of welcome, and a kind look out of his mastiff's eyes, making me as free of his snug green-roofed dwelling as I had so often made him free of the street. Towards the hour of sunset I went up to the little attic window again, and looked out over the drenched housetops for any sign of a break in the weather. The rain had ceased, and the western sky had lightened somewhat, taking on an indefinable warmth of hue. There was no sunshine, nor any hope of sunshine, but there was a light abroad that picked out all the browns and reds and yellows in the landscape, wondrously intensifying them, while leaving all other hues as grey and cold as ever. Past 11 o'clock, and a cloudless night of stars, with the woodlarks singing high over the village, and the cuckoos calling in the hills as though it were broad day. Yes, the change has come. Farmer Coles is never far out in his prognostications. It will be cutting weather tomorrow, and tomorrow I must be up with the earliest of them, and away to the hoe field. 4. Of summer evenings in Windlecombe, all through haying and harvest time, you see men lounging about the village, one and all obsessed by the same trance-like, serenely dilatory mood. All have pipes well alight, leaving a trail of smoke behind them on the dusky golden air. All have hands thrust deep in trouser pockets, carry their unshaven chins high, are tired as dogs, and look as somnolently happy as noontide owls. And of all the days of the week, there are more of these placid optimists abroad, and these characteristics are most to be noted in them, on the evening of the last working day. To-night I went up and down the green, the most uncertain of a deliberately irresolute company, half a dozen times perhaps, before, by common but unvoiced consent, we turned our lagging footsteps towards the inn. All the while I was rejoicing in a possession, priceless indeed, yet hard won as might be, a heart and mind filled with the spirit of the Cotter's Saturday night. You cannot get this chief of all country pleasures in exchange for money. It is to be had in only one way, at the cost of long laborious days in the fields, and every tired muscle, every aching joint in my body stood then as witness that I had done my best to earn what I had of it, if it might be earned at all. The old oak window-seat in the parlour of the Three Thatchers was as softly welcome as the Chancellor's woolsack. I would not have exchanged that mug of home-brewed ale for a draught of ambrosia at the feet of the gods. The crimson sunset light streamed hot upon me as I sat on the window-ledge, half among the parlour company, and half among those congregated on the benches under the Virginia creeper outside. Every moment or two some other tired haymaker strolled up, and added his solid breadth and his tobacco smoke to the throng. But we were not all field workers in the Three Thatchers to-night, nor had only the common causes of tired limbs and sun-parched throats brought us together. Young Daniel Dray was knitting his dark brows over some papers and account books at the trestle table, and young Tom Clemmer sat close by, thoughtfully swinging a cricket bat pendulum fashion between his outstretched legs. A silence fell upon the company. "Well," said Tom Clemmer at last, "I dunno. 'Tis ne'er some matter awk'ard for Windlecombe, wi' young Master Coles haying, and Tim Searle haying, and George Locker, and Tom, and George Wright, and Bill here all haying. How a fortune be us to make up a team!" You could pick out the members of the cricket club committee amidst the crowd by reason of their grave, troubled faces, whereas all other faces wore the easy, contented smile of the village Saturday night. We had weighty business to consider. The annual challenge had arrived from the Stavisham Club. They were a cocksure, overweening lot, the town 11, and we had set our hearts on beating them at next Saturday's match. But there was the hay to carry, if the weather held. Many of our best players would be in the fields. It looked as though the town were to add Windlecombe again to their long list of village victories. Secretary Dray gnawed savagely at the butt of his pen. "I knows how 'twill be," he said. "5 men and a tail of boys. The old story. Tom here'll knock up his couple of score, and then 'twill be hout, hout, hout for the rest of us i' 2 overs. And I can just hear they chalk-headed town chaps laughing." It was a dismal picture. The fragrance went out of our tobacco, and no man thought of his ale. The 3 canaries carolled so joyously in their cages overhead that I could have wrung their necks with all the pleasure in life. Young Daniel stared straight into the eye of the setting sun with the very face of disaster. "But 'tis the bowling," he went on. "Ne'er a change of bowlers there'll be. And me and George Havers can't go on for ever. No, 'tis all over again, I tell you. The boys'll have their fun, and Windlecombe another smashing." He swept the club papers into his pocket and rose to fill a pipe. "But mind you," he added, looking grimly round on the company, "I'll have that there Flittermouse grocer chap's wicket this time, or I'll be... you see if I don't, if I had to throw at his head." Long after night had fallen, and all the village was quiet under the dim half-moon, I came out again upon the green, to wander and ruminate over the week that had gone by. I bared my arm to the biceps, and even in that disguising light I could see the sunburn dark upon it. Yawning and stretching involuntarily, a delicious ache spread over me from top to toe. The 7 Sisters loomed hard by, and I went and laid down at full length on one of the seats, looking up through the black wilderness of boughs at the flinching starshine, and watching the nightjars as they wheeled and whirred above me through the scented dark. They're a merry company, the nightjars. Perhaps there is no other sound in nature that comes nearer to pure mirth and jollity than this rhythmic spinning-wheel chorus of theirs, up there where the dense pine foliage made a sort of black coast to the dark blue ocean of the summer night. A whole nation of them was astir. They did not utter their peculiar note when on the wing, but every moment or two one of the concourse came to rest on a branch with a sudden snap, and forthwith set his spinning jenny blithely going. There is another sound which you hear of summer evenings, often far into the night, and which is nearly akin to that of the nightjar. I heard it only a minute ago in one of the garden hedges as I came across the green, but when the 2 songs occur together there is no confusing them. They are both continuous mechanical sounds, and each is curiously varied in tone, speed, and intensity. But while the nightjar's music is a rich, full tremolo, uttered from some high point, generally the branch of a tree, the grasshopper warbler sings always close to earth. His note is thinner, shriller, faster. If your fingers were as deft as his slender throat, you could imitate the sound exactly by the rapid chinking together of 2 threepenny bits. End of section 13.
Please subscribe to update new videos. Please share and like if you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much.